Ooh, doggies. Another 3 days, another quota. I'm gonna be honest, I'm not entirely satisfied with the overall income I'm getting back from this. Damn it! This is rigged! Oh, alright, hold on. Wait, I'm still in this! No! I got too confident! Well, it's more than I had going in. I'll take it.
Well, now that that's out of the way, it's back to touring moons, right? Oh? You'd rather see that? Alright, let's try it. How bad could it be? Hello viewers, Sweetflamer here, and welcome to another Lethal Company video. Today we're going to be reviewing and ranking a handful of modded monsters. Before we begin, I will go over the usual rundown for those who do not know. Just in case. Lethal Company was a multiplayer indie horror game released back in 2023 that lets between 1 to 4 players go to an assortment of abandoned industrial moons inhabited by dangerous creatures to collect a handful of items to sell to the company you work for. Every time you meet a quota, it increases. The cycle repeats until you eventually fail to meet the quota and are fired via ejection into space. The gameplay is so addicting that several game builders began making their own free add-ons to the game. All the following mods and more are available through an app called Thunderstore if you're looking to play these yourself.
Now to bring you up to speed, I have been given special clearance by the company and sent to the Planet 44 liquidation to set up stations and electronic equipment to monitor and document potentially hostile monsters. The results were traumatizing. The company does not truly grasp how dangerous these things are. Not like they ever cared.
The company must stay happy. The company must...
Some of these monsters require direct face-to-face field research to get information and footage on. But halfway through the experiment, I found something else out. The Control Company mod. This mod allowed me firsthand to see most remaining monsters' unique abilities and forms without risking my life directly. It didn't make it any less terrifying though. So now that all this is out of the way, let's rewind the camera footage and count down the modded monsters of Lethal Company.
Number 44, Voodoo Enemy by Kantan. What was the thought process behind this? It's a JPG of a bandaged face. It wasn't cropped or even given a physical body. It's just a slab with a picture on it moving around the facility. What could have been a good idea ended up essentially becoming a next spot. I really don't think there's anything else to say about this beyond that. It is incomparable to the others, not that scary, not that effortful, and pretty lazy. Even for those who want a less scary monster in the game, there are much better choices coming up. It's just not even close to top of the line in any category or form. Number 43, Bell Monster by Drac. This monster shares a lot of similarities with the Barber, but forgot to include the very things that made that monster effective. Having it be invisible all the time gives no element of fear and instead makes people confused. The bell sound, in turn, is not incredibly scary, given it's not associated as a fearful sound in regular games. I'd like to see if there was a physical form to this monster that was made, because otherwise, there's nothing particularly special to say about this one. Number 42, Siren Head by C Code Lang. Interestingly enough, the model for this thing is pretty impressive. Looking at it moping around the moons, I can tell a lot of effort was most certainly put into this. But some parts of his scripts are either bugged or don't make a whole lot of sense. It does not chase after you if it sees you or hears you, and it doesn't kill you. It instead grabs you and never, I repeat, never lets go, meaning your only hope of getting saved is if a teammate teleports you, assuming you have one. To reiterate, I genuinely can't tell if some of these script choices were intentional or bugs, but either way, it doesn't make it incredibly enjoyable or scary having this guy around as a result.
Number 41. Daffy's Monster Terry by Daphne. It's a chicken. His name is Terry. He walks around. That's it. Now you might be wondering why it's even this high up, given the incredibly plain and bare-bone description I just gave it. And the reason being, it doesn't suffer the same problems as the last three. It has an understandable pattern, it can be seen, and it's not bugged. At least not for me. But anyways, let's move on. Number 40. Skull Enemy by McCush. This is a more widely acknowledged modded monster. It is also a joke. It's a floating, unstoppable skull that insta-kills everyone it touches, and can go right through any surface including walls, heat-seeking the nearest player. That concept makes it sound deadly, but it's really not as bad as it sounds. It's honestly comical to see a floating skull head with all that power just slowly levitating towards you. It can be troublesome at times, particularly when coupled with other monsters, but it's not very creative of an idea overall, especially when stacked up against other monsters you're going to see soon. Number 39. Big Mouth by Wexop. Another monster meant to be a joke. It has a similar premise to the Bell monster, but had a much better execution. It takes the form of normal teeth, but when approached will grow in size and insta-kill players in its biting proximity. But again, it's not very scary. Even if you're the one that dies, you'll likely end up laughing or annoyed, not scared. And it's easy to avoid. Still, it is pretty funny. Number 38. SCP-106 by Daki. Now this one could probably be argued to be higher up, especially amongst players who actually played SCP. But compared to the other monsters from the same franchise I've seen modded into this game, this one was pretty underwhelming. It's a bald, shadowy figure with an axe who walks towards the nearest player, insta-killing on physical contact. In that sense, its behavior is quite similar to the skull, but this one's better just because it has an overall more imposing figure that can actually pull a genuine scare from time to time. But like I said earlier, better exists. Number 37. Football by Kittenji. I have absolutely no idea what this thing is from. When I first heard of it in Viperian's showcase video, it looked like this one had unique mechanics, such as having the player do tasks. But when I encountered Football, she was basically just a reskinned ghost girl, who would appear periodically before running at the player and killing them. Could just be a bug, so I don't have it at the bottom as a result. Others will probably enjoy this monster more than I did. Last minute edit after writing the video script. I reviewed other footage of people interacting with this monster after approach, so it definitely was a bug on my end. Number 36. Baldy Enemy by Risky VR. Never thought I'd be facing this idiot again anytime soon. But here we are. And he hasn't changed one bit. He may take longer strides forwards, but I'm not entirely sure. This guy always knows where you are and slowly but surely inches forward, his ruler sounds of course remaining as his ambiance. There's also the loud but cheap jump scare if he catches you. While it is somewhat wacky, this monster is still pretty tacky and was not reworked at all to fit in with the surroundings or different settings of Lethal Company, so he stands out like a sore thumb. I couldn't even recommend this one based on how good you are. I'd only recommend this for fans who already know this guy. Number 35. Immortal Snail by Almsboy. This is probably the best entry on the list that is more meant to be hilarious instead of scary. This creature is as simple as it sounds. It slowly oozes across the interior floor towards the nearest player, and like others listed before, one-shots the player if they make contact. Perhaps the reason this ranks higher is how acknowledged it is in the community. Many other creators have had a lot of fun with this monster, proving he has more value than the other joke monsters. He can also be a surprisingly difficult obstacle if coupled with other more deadly monsters, as he takes up the hallway. It's truly interesting how this one can be at times.
Number 34, Peepers by X753, an older modded monster on Thunderstore. They're not that lethal. They search for players and jump to latch onto them, in a similar fashion to tulip snakes. Once on a player, they kinda just sit there. But there is a significant payoff. They add more weight, so you'll run slower and jump shorter. You could simply get hit by a shovel to be rid of them. There's also a possibility they don't just go away when you leave the moon. Interesting premise, but not that deadly and not that scary. Number 33, JPOG Stegosaurus by 34795. You know what? The guy who made Winter Lodge. Okay, now we're getting to the considerably good monsters. This creature often spawns in groups and are territorial. Normally they just wander around the map without a care in the world, and will normally leave players alone if they leave them alone. If provoked, it will rush at you, hurting you until you die. The model for this monster is impressive, and the AI isn't half bad either. Only thing that I think would make more sense is if all the Stegosaurus in a group turn on you if one is provoked, as opposed to only the individual one. Still pretty good. Number 32, Moai Enemy by Because4313. I was not expecting to like this one, as I have never understood nor liked the memes surrounding it, but a simple amount of dedication was enough to prove me wrong. There are many variants of these moving statues. You can trade with gold ones. The regular ones try to kill you. Green and blue ones are interior ones that can also trade. But the purple one takes the cake as the best one. It has some kind of aura around it that can turn neutral Moai statues against you, and it can also follow you inside and outside, making it the most dangerous of the bunch. Surprised and fairly impressed, but still not scared. Number 31, Surfaced by Surface Team. Now before you get confused, this is a mod that has several new monsters included. The full lineup in this mod is a bit of a mixed bag. Allow me to elaborate. The clown hornfish, while funny, doesn't do anything. It's basically scrap. The scary lobster just walks around and is basically a less dangerous spore lizard. The horseshoe crab is an undermining one that can actually kill you if you're not careful, but it's so funny being flung through the air inside or outside. Rodrigo is... How do I even properly explain Rodrigo? I mean, it's not bad or buggy, but it's just try to deduce what happened in this photo. That's the best way I can describe it. Urchins are alright, not challenging to avoid, but still somewhat of a danger. Mantis shrimps have a more impressive model than the spooky shrimp. And Bruce has a very creative model, but doesn't really do any damage despite being a great white shark. Some odd design choices, filled with content, but still not scared! Number 30, SCP-966 by Project SCP. The first mod on this list that actually scared me. This monster is very well thought out. It's a monster you can periodically see by scanning, and like many monsters you will soon see, it has a regular roaming phase, a stalking phase, and then a chase phase. This monster can be killed with a shotgun, and it can be tracked on the ship, but that doesn't make it any less frightening. The reason why it's still in the lower half of the list is because there are other monsters that have similar AIs and are simply scarier. This is still nothing to scoff at. Would recommend. Number 29, Sandstar by NMY0737. Now this is a fascinating one. It's not that scary, but it's insanely creative. They spawn in hordes outside and emerge from the ground if approached. They then form themselves into spikes and fly towards the nearest player. This is definitely one of a kind. Never seen something like this. And it helps that its AI and model are pretty good. This one poses a bit of a challenge and is more fit for a wider audience of players. Number 28, Shockwave Drone Enemy by Solid Stone. Another one of the older modded monsters. Its AI and what it does is actually quite complex. Sparks can fly from it, it periodically creates a blowback of a force field, and I think I remember it shooting lasers once or twice. And it can go outside. What's a little weird is it doesn't home in on players if it spots them. Unfortunately, this mod did not really age well with the rest of the game and Thunderstore. The old bird essentially does the same thing, but is faster, more lethal, and more intimidating. If that's not your usual cup of tea, then this mod is for you. Number 27, Drone and Mobile Turret, aka Moonswept Mod, by Moonswept Team. For better or worse, I'm ranking these two as one, since they're both part of the same mod. The mobile turret is alright. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's a turret on a homing Roomba. The real meat of this mod is the drone, however. It doesn't aim to kill players, and instead pumps TZP into the halls it's flying through. It can be just as disorienting as it is funny. No more shelling out $200 for an inhalant that lasts for around a minute, because this thing gives the full experience for free, and unlimited. It may sound simple, but it's actually a pretty good bunch. Number 26, Sentinel Mod, by Arborino. Unlike the Shockwave drone, this one actually aged quite well, and can hold its own when compared to the old bird. This monster is largely intimidating. It's a large sentry on wheels. It has an aiming laser that has unlimited range. If it locks onto you, you're not going to get away very easily. It's equipped with a turret-like firing style, and it's fast. And I mean faster than you. Your best option is leaving the facility. While the model doesn't look as polished as, say, SCP-966's did, its behavior traits and overall impact is enough to override that and give this monster a worthy note. Would recommend, even for those who are easily scared. Just don't underestimate its difficulty. Number 25, Pajant Goose by Ziolan? Another rather curious one. What's crazy is if not handled properly, this thing can kill a full lobby without any struggle. Normally these creatures are roaming around the facility. They won't even get angry if you touch them like normal enemies. They protect golden eggs, which are worth crazy amounts of money. If you take them, the goose will track the person holding it to the ends of the moon, inside or outside, and one-shot them on contact. It's a similar risk-reward situation to beehives, except it's more creative and more scary, seeing that goose bring out its extra set of teeth. Ugh. Number 24, Menstalker by Ya Boy Ducky. This thing has similar AI to SCP-966, the primary difference being it doesn't disappear. You really have to rely on the ship map because this monster is really good at ducking behind corners right before you see it. Its stalking and roaming phases are typically longer than other monsters on this list. But don't push your luck if you see it. It can still one-shot you, and it is faster than you, so take special care not to anger it. It ranks a little higher simply for being more common and more direct in its approach to players. Number 23, Mysterious Harbingers by Instance World. The models for these creatures are remarkable. Despite what they may look like, these creatures are actually neutral. Their main objective is teleporting scrap, monsters, and players. It's not really out specifically for or against any of these, so that makes them unpredictable and ironically quite dangerous. They could teleport a coil head near you. They could drop you down a large hole. They can teleport scrap closer to the entrance, and so much more, just to give you an idea. They can be a little scary during the start of most matches, but they become more nuisances after a while. Still a good mod. Number 22, Light Eater by Lega. This one, like the previous entry, has an astoundingly creative model. I'd probably go so far as to say it's my honorary favorite. Their presence is intimidating and often intense. This creature's mechanics are related to light energy, draining power permanently from facility lights as it patrols. If it gathers enough energy, it will let out a flashbang far more powerful than the regular one, as in the ringing will remain in your ears for the rest of the round. Annoying, but nonetheless interesting. It also has melee, but it doesn't one-shot. An interesting pick of the litter, to be certain. Number 21, Country Road Creature by Wexop. Okay, now we're getting into the real meat of these monsters. A lot of the remaining entries are nightmare fuel. This thing can control the lights when it spots a player, and acts similarly to the Faceless Stalker. It's bigger, louder, and it looks far more abnormal. Another thing this monster has that future chase monsters will have is a jump scare. When the creature grabs you, an animation will play before it kills you. This monster is scary as hell, and I would recommend it for more experienced players. Number 20. Faceless. Okay, you know what? No, I'm calling it by its real name. Slenderman by Sparkle. This is another chase monster. Its AI is nearly identical to SCP-966, with the main difference being a shorter roaming phase. This thing will home in a lot quicker. It also has audio cues guaranteed to help make you jump. Bias could be settling in because unlike 966, who is an SCP I did not know of until making this video, I was familiar with this clown. So it had a little more of an impact. Number 19. Nightmare Freddy by the Weavers. Interesting way to use a character. As opposed to being a chase character, this monster instead is an outdoor monster that doesn't pursue at all. Freddles will spawn as the day progresses and run around the ship. If not dealt with in time, a distorted version of Freddy's jingle will play and he will spawn. But even then, he doesn't really chase players. He walks towards the nearest player and one-shots them, so he's not that much of a threat. But his models and the Freddles models are impeccable. Probably the most detailed on this list. Number 18. Infected Company by Infected Company. Okay, this may be my one cheat on this ranking. This isn't strictly speaking a monster, it's a whole game mode. One person is randomly selected to be infected. That player has an insanity meter that will gradually fill as the day progresses. The infected can eventually transform into a monster with enhanced speed and murder their teammates. When transformed, the whole facility locks down and powers off until it's over. The others will find enough scrap to leave the moon. There is no time limit whatsoever on this game mode. The infected, while transformed, is creepy and obviously fun to control. Would recommend this for 4 or more players. Consider the classic bigger company mod to allow for up to 20 players to play. Number 17. Roller Enemy by NMY0737. Ever think a nutcracker is too easy? This monster capitalizes on the gimmick in so many ways. It's a primarily stationary creature that curls up in a ball. It will open up occasionally to look around. If it sees an employee, its ball grows spikes and begins rolling towards the player, and like many others, one-shots the player if it hits them. The additional aggro stinger helps raise the fear factor, but it's still not overly scary. But its difficulty is another story. It is faster than you if you aggro it, and its overall design and AI makes it feel organic. If you told me that this was a new monster in an update to the main game, I would believe you. It's that good. Number 16. Rolling Giant by Nom Nom AB. This monster is one I've come around to, and it's hard to explain why. I still have no idea where this thing came from, nor do I think its overall design is that scary when I see it on Google Images or the Thunderstore page. But it's a very different story when you're in the game being chased by it. Maybe it's the SFXs or the low lighting. I don't know how to describe it. It's just scary, and I don't know why. It can also spawn anywhere, so download this mod at your own risk. It's surprisingly a pretty good and solid monster overall. Number 15. Vile Vending Machine by Meatball Demon. This one is fascinating. I've said that multiple times by now. It's an outdoor monster with a bloody hand coming out of it. You can give it your scrap in exchange for sellable cola. It can actually be quite useful if you have lower value scrap. It comes at a risk, however. If you're too greedy, it will grab you and turn you into a cola, killing you. It's a little similar to the company monster in that regard, except you can actually interact with it. The creativity behind its model and AI is certainly noteworthy, and I would recommend. Just make sure you have more than one person in your lobby though. Just in case. Number 14. Mimics by X753. Here it is. The first, the original. This modded monster will be familiar to most players as the first modded monster made. And after all this time, it still holds up really well as a fairly creepy monster the first few times and a worthy obstacle to keep around for replay value. This monster disguises itself as a fire exit. Normally a very random distinction will give it away, but if a player mistakes it for a real fire exit and interacts with it, it will eat the player without any restraint. It has received multiple updates over the months to complicate its configuration, so unlike other content creators that try to deduce its traits, I won't even bother trying to explain, because that info will quickly become outdated. You're on your own. It's honestly crazy how well this one has aged over time, and it's still one of the better monsters of this game. Number 13, JPOG T-Rex by Winter Lodge Guy. Another surprisingly concrete monster. As one might have guessed from the name, this brings a massive T-Rex into the game. Unfortunately, the rule of movement does not apply to these. It will largely just walk around the moons. It will occasionally attack other monsters as well. If it sees an employee, it will roar and run towards it. It's not as fast as you might think, but it can still catch up to you if you periodically run out of stamina. Its AI is a bit similar to a forest giant, albeit this monster is a little less of a nuisance. Also, explain to me how this behemoth can walk across bridges undeterred and without consequence. I love coming across this thing even if it's a very dangerous creature on a larger scale. Well done, would recommend for reasonably seasoned to expert players. Number 12, Biodiversity Mod by, okay. Just like Surfaced, this is a collection of monsters, not just one. There are far fewer weak or mild links in this one, however. The vermin is the monster I saw the least of, and I'm not exactly sure what they do. Leaf boys are tiny creatures that you probably won't even notice. They blend in quite well. But the noise they make can attract more dangerous enemies, like dogs. Prototaxes are interesting and possibly toxic creatures. Their model and animations are great as well. The Ogopogos are absolutely crazy. They emerge from the water surrounding a map after a warning roar, bite the nearest player, and take it back into the water, resulting in almost certain death. The whole thing is wild. But the best of the bunch is easily the Alo, for various reasons. Its AI, model, animations, and overall interactions with the player are astounding. It's a less outward version of the Bracken. It goes towards a harmed player and just grabs them and drags them away, as opposed to snapping their neck. Sometimes they even heal the player. Now, these things won't kill you, but they could be a bit of a problem and a bit of a helping hand too, depending on the scenario. Regardless, I really like this creature. It can help, it can hinder, and it can scare. Again, a solid lineup overall, definitely would recommend. Number 11, Lethal Gargoyles by Drop the Deuce. An outwardly British monster being reviewed by a patriotic American. This is bound to end well. This creature does something that no other monster really aims to directly do. The power to annoy. It shouts insults as it wanders around the facility, oftentimes talking about the player's incompetence, how utterly screwed they are, and sometimes even make fun of the way they died in previous rounds. If provoked or approached, they will start attacking the player until they're dead. They are killable, so if you're not in the mood to be endlessly insulted the whole time, it's probably worth the thought of taking it out. The unique way its AI is built is the reason it ranks this high. Again, I want to roast this thing for being British, but even I cannot deny that this was a good piece of work. Number 10, Nightmare Foxy by the Weavers. Now, this is kind of what I expected from a creature like Nightmare Freddy. This monster is far more direct with its AI and is far more scary as a result. It normally just sits inactive in the facility, but if a player is within its view range for too long, he'll wind up into a new stance as a distorted version of FNAF 2's ambiance plays. After around 20 seconds, he'll come running for said player and will stop at nothing. He will even break down doors to get to said player and one-shot them. The model, like Freddy, is immaculately detailed and good, but the overall execution of this monster is more dynamic and the fear factor is much higher as a result. Oh, and it can't be killed. If this thing activates when you're near it, get to the nearest exit. Number 9, The Thing by Wexop. This one has a strange execution. The model doesn't look that good, but the sheer amount of things it can do propels it back into the Nightmare Fuel title, and it's one of the more complex monsters on this list as a result. It behaves similarly to SCP-966 in Country Road Creature, disappearing periodically as it stalks and chases players. But it does not end there, not with this monster. If caught, you'll be teleported to a secluded section of the facility that has dim red lighting and not much else. Your goal is either to escape or kill the Thing. If you spend too long there, or if the Thing so much as sees you, It will pursue you, jump scare you again, and kill you. The added isolation of this effect adds to the fear factor tremendously. Do not activate this thing unless you're good with a shovel. Promise me, you will die otherwise. Doesn't mess around. Number 8. Haunted Harpist by Bob123. This one has been around for a while and has aged like fine wine. This creature actually has an adorable design, and is for the most part passive. It will play a harp, giving it a distinct audio cue to draw you to it. You can attempt to take the harp, but doing so will prompt the ghost to attack. It can be killed, but it's not easy. There is a smaller blue variant of the creature that plays a bagpipe, which is also sellable should you steal it. It instead runs away if provoked. Reason being, Piper ghosts are trailed by force field protected, larger ghosts with shotguns. Not a fight you would want to engage in. It's honestly refreshing coming across this creature. A great risk reward is offered with their presence. Others may try to steal the instruments and kill the ghosts, but if I'm being perfectly honest, I think I'm fine just listening to the ghosts play. The harp ghost can be taken down fairly easily by most players with a shovel, but be very careful you know what you're doing before scaring the Piper. Number 7. Scopophobia by Jasper Creations. This one will be familiar to most who've been to Thunderstorm before. The determination in this monster's AI is incredible. It also helps that unlike every other SCP on this list, I actually had a fair understanding beforehand of what this thing was. For those who are not familiar with the Shy Guy, as we call him, he walks around outside or inside the facility or curls up in a ball. If a player sees his face, he will get up and start screaming for around a minute, a pretty long wind up to a chase phase. It will then track the players who saw its face to the ends of the earth and kill them. You cannot outrun it, not even with full sprint. You cannot kill it, you cannot escape it by going inside or outside. So unlike most monsters stated before, there is almost no way to escape your fate if you aggravate this monster. Your only hope is closing the ship doors, which we all know doesn't last forever, or leaving the moon. There is no other way. That gives this monster extreme power and brings it all the way up here. Very scary. Number 6. Herobrine by Kittenji. Before you start assuming, no, I was not terrified of or really believed in this internet legend while it was at large, so there's no nostalgia bias on this one. Herobrine is just extremely well done. And while yes, his overall design doesn't really fit in with this game, his AI and the amount of things he can do are incredibly scary and creative. He acts similarly to the Ghost Girl, but he never feels like a reskin. If anything, he acts more outwardly hostile throughout every second he's haunting a player. To start haunting a player, he'll typically appear or jump scare you, which will likely get you every time. He will then proceed to haunt you in ways that could affect your physical health as well as your mental health, teleporting you, distorting your vision, knocking you back, or even lighting a flint and steel trail. And then he will start running towards the player after around 30 seconds. You are faster than him, but he will teleport closer to you if you get too far away from him, making it hard for you to escape the chase phase. Your body even turns into a Minecraft avatar if he kills you. This monster has so many things that he can do, and he will likely scare you every single time, and if he doesn't, he'll be an incredibly dangerous foe, one you may not be able to avoid. Number 5. Bureau. Telepathic Object by Mr. Unreal Team. This one was far scarier than I initially thought. This thing has relatively smart AI, has a very uncanny model, and is very fast. Perhaps a mix of many other high-ranking monsters that came before it in a sense. Seeing this large hooded creature start charging at you induces so much fear, in a way like no other monster can. It's also nearly impossible to shake, so you better hope you're near the entrance, as there's almost no other way to get rid of him if he spots you. Absolutely incredible, and frightening to no end. 10 out of 10. Number 4. The Fiend by Rollvote. Okay, who the hell designed this thing? This monster is absolutely terrifying. Its model may seem a bit more simple compared to monsters like Buer, but in this monster's case, that helps it look scarier. The Fiend always knows where you are, has no passive phase whatsoever, can break down doors during chase phases, It's difficult to outrun or loop, has a jump scare if it catches you, and then one-shots you. This monster is also a more widely acknowledged monster in the modding community, and many of them had similar reactions to my own. Only drawback is, as a whole, this monster's AI is more simple than the last 3 monsters. The Fiend may not be at the number 1 spot, but just know it's my honorary scariest monster on this list. Number 3. Locker by Zeal's Prince. The design of this monster is unbelievably creative. Its utilization is very unique. It could be a hindrance as much as an object. If a player gets too close to it, it will turn towards the player and lunge at it. Rinse and repeat. It can be sidestepped easily despite its speed, and its audio cues generally give you enough time to react before it charges. You can't get it stuck on a corner or in a large room, jump on its head to get around it. Just make sure you're not in a long straight hallway. You will die. Its death animation is interesting as well. It almost looks like it burns and eats the player in its mouth. This monster has no known ties to any other IPs, and the sheer amount of creativity and good design propels it to the likes of the Door Mimic, so it also has good replayability. I can tell a lot of effort was put into it, and it is an enjoyable monster overall. Number 2. Cave Dweller by HTS. This was a last-minute addition, simply because I felt I needed more entries. Forget almost everything I said about the Fiend. This is easily the most dangerous monster in Thunderstore's Lethal Company pages. Its form is disturbing and immensely terrifying. But unlike other monsters before this one, its roaming and chasing phases are nearly identical. So you know what that means. It's never slow. Period. This thing bolts around the facility at all times. If it sees you, it will scream at you, instead opt to run on all 4s and do the jump scare one shot if caught. For how much we've seen this mechanic, it has never been this bad. Fear factor is very high and the AI is entirely unforgiving. Would only recommend for experts. Okay, before I name off my number 1, here's a very special honorable mention that I did get to see. Technically it's not just a monster mod, but it is at the same time. It primarily serves to give additional buffs to monsters to help make the game scarier than it was before. It's harder to get out of reach of spiders, snare fleets act more dangerously, brackens turn off nearby lights and find specific targets more often, and the ghost scroll can haunt your walkie-talkie and make you see hallucinations. Perhaps the most notable is a new monster called the Walker. It will distort and glitch your vision as it suddenly comes out of nowhere near a player without warning to kill them. It's terrifying. But that's not even the best part. If the Walker or bracken catches you, it doesn't kill you like normal. It becomes similar to The Thing, where it brings you to an isolated area to mess with you mentally before killing you. The bracken chases you down an endless hallway, and the Walker stalks you along an unending stairway. We recommend only for the bravest of players. This mod will at no point let you rest. Number 1. The Giant Specimens by Zuziolan. This mod introduces 2 absolute marvels of monsters. The Forest Keeper on its own is generally difficult and fairly scary. These 2 new monsters are described as family members of the Forest Keepers, and they both expand upon the difficulty and fear factor in different ways, all while seeming otherwise they look like they could have separate identities from the vanilla monster they're associated with. Driftwood Giants have a terrifying new set of teeth, are roughly twice the size of Forest Keepers, are yellow, and walk on all 4s. They roar and dash at players they see and eat them if caught. It is much harder to outrun these things than Forest Keepers, but they are still vulnerable to flash grenades and old birds. The Redwood Giants are entirely different. These are Driftwood Giants fully matured. They're back to standing on their back legs, have a red skin, and have grown into the largest creatures I've ever seen in Lethal Company. As such, it will largely ignore players and other monsters, and instead opt to merely walk around. Each step causes tremors and can crush you if not careful. While not as dangerous as Forest Keepers or Driftwood Giants, it is an amazing feast for the eyes to just look up and see this enormous monster towering over the whole moon. Most players can survive against a Redwood Giant, but only experienced players are going to survive against a Driftwood Giant. Stay focused, and you just might survive. that will do it for this video. After hundreds upon hundreds of hours, I never thought I would be utterly terrified of this game again. Turns out these mod makers are far more skilled than I really give them credit for. I'm definitely going back to Moons after this, and I may never review this kind of content again, so please don't ask me to. If you do want me to review more modded content, please let me know in the comments. I don't really care if you subscribe or not, but if you enjoy, please leave a like and comment. Thanks for watching, and maybe I'll see you next time.